Today I'm talking about Masters of the Universe Revelation. Announced back in 2019, it originally came out with a part 1 in July, but part 2 isn't coming out until November 23rd, 2021. The trailer for part 2 dropped on October 27th, and watching it reminded me that I wanted to make this video at all. I feel like I watched the part 1 and then sort of put it on the back burner. I didn't really think about it after I was done watching it. So I should mention that the show was developed by Kevin Smith and produced by Powerhouse Animation Studios, and it's intended to be a spiritual successor to the 1983 Filmation series. I don't believe that's a direct sequel, since I do remember seeing Kevin Smith on Twitter saying something along the lines of them not having the rights to the original property. But I feel like now is a good time to just say my opinion, especially since I'm not really a He-Man fan. I remember there was a reboot in the early 2000s, and I did watch some of that, but it wasn't, again, a series that I've ever been super overly invested in. So this is coming from sort of an outsider perspective. To quickly go over the plot, it follows the death of He-Man and Skeletor. They battle at Grayskull and then they both die. That isn't something that was made super clear in the trailer, and I know it got a lot of heat from a lot of people after the series came out. I didn't super care about the twist with Teela being the main character. I was a little disappointed that it wasn't a He-Man show, since that is what I associate with Masters of the Universe. As opposed to someone who really loves that franchise, I can understand why they might be upset. The series follows a time skip ahead from the original series, where He-Man is dead, so Teela finds out that He-Man and Adam were the same person, but doesn't handle the news well, and she sort of walks away from her responsibilities, her reputation, her position at the kingdom. She ends up becoming a bounty hunter, treasure hunter, whatever. She's also teamed up with a girl named Audra, who is sort of her right-hand man slash tech support. We're brought into a future where the world is falling apart. Magic is more or less gone, and that leads to life being unsustainable, especially for creatures who relied on magic. The show essentially picks up with Teela and Audra being recruited by a disguised Evelyn to steal an artifact from Triclops, who is sort of the leader of this New Age religion that focuses on technology. They're sort of like housing at Snake Mountain. I thought this was really unique and interesting, and if there was more than 5 episodes out, I would love to see them progress with it to either do some sort of subplot or to do a mini arc. After stealing the artifact, the plot moves ahead. The overall mission of the show is that when He-Man Adam died, the Sword of Power was split in 2, and Teela and her friends have to reassemble it by traveling to literally heaven and hell to get the sword pieces and then to forge them back together to save magic for their universe. They're assigned this quest from the sorceress and also Evelyn. This is vaguely reasoned out by saying that Teela has some sort of big secret that ties her to everything, but it's not overly specified in the show, since literally anytime it's brought up, Teela brushes them off and she's like, tell me later, even though they literally say it's important. And Teela is originally like, no, I don't want to do that. And then Audra is like, let's be adventurers. I want to know what it feels like to be a hero, starry-eyed sort of thing. And Teela is like, yeah, okay. For you, sure. Aside from Audra, Teela, and Evelyn, the cast is rounded out by the reintroduction of Man-at-Arms, Orko, Beastman, and Roboto. This isn't a show where you travel progressively or it's provided with a lot of filler. They sort of go from point A to point B pretty quickly, which I liked. It feels snappy, kind of like a D&D campaign where they're just sort of picking moments in time to show in the show without really making you watch them go everywhere. There are some dragged out moments where I feel like it could have been a bit quicker, especially the fight between the mer people and the crew while they're trying to get to the gate to hell or whatever is a little long. You also get occasional flashbacks in the show to give a bit more information on what's going on, although these will vary depending on your knowledge of the characters and how necessarily you feel like they are. I feel like if you're really invested in the original series, they might mean more to you. When the crew gets to heaven, which really just for Grayskull's protectors, we're reintroduced to Adam, who's the only one there who prefers his weaker form compared to his actual He-Man form. I was surprised by how little the show let Teela and Adam express their feelings or try to justify how they reacted to each other in the past or towards the whole Adam He-Man secret in general. Adam also sort of tries to talk to Teela and she brushes him off, which to me felt a little odd, but I guess that would depend on what side of the corner you're in for Teela as a character. I'm going to quickly go over the three main characters, so Tila, Audra, and Evelyn. Tila serves as the main character, and to be honest, she was probably my least favorite character overall in the series. I understand she's dealing with grief and facing the fact that she can never really get over the betrayal of Adam He-Man, but at the same time, I couldn't really get behind her in this aspect either. When I would watch the old show growing up, for some reason, I always assumed Tila knew Adam was He-Man, but didn't say anything, so I could just biasly be thinking like, oh, how did she not know, since there really wasn't a whole lot of visual change between Adam and He-Man in the original show, and as the audience, we obviously know, so it could just be me sort of not understanding the disconnect with that. I was also never entirely convinced what Tila's motives were or why she was even there. Actually, if it wasn't for Audra, she wouldn't be there, since that was the reason she started this quest. Tila just felt like she was kind of dragged along, which is one of my least favorite tropes for main characters. I did think that Sarah Michelle Gellar did a great job voicing Tila, especially for the character that she has. I think the voice suited Tila really well, and she did a great job delivering lines and acting out as the character overall. Audra acts as Tila's right-hand man in the new world. For being a character created for the show, Audra ended up being probably my favorite character out of the main three. Audra is tech savvy and full of energy. I can't really tell the character's ages in the series, but she does act a bit younger than Tila to me. She also doesn't react in the same way a lot of the other characters do. She isn't blinded by what the world used to be, which to me makes it seem like she grew up in the magicless environment. She also sort of talks about things as if they're stories or legends that she's heard, and not so much like cemented facts that did happen. I don't have much else to say about Audra. One thing to mention is that her and Tila may or may not have a romance in the show. They don't do anything with it that cements it one way or another. So to me, it doesn't exist, because if they're not going to do anything with it, then I do not care. But if you're into subtext or just like shipping, I guess, then go off. Like, if you like it, go for it. The cast of main characters is rounded out by Evelyn. She's a good guy now, kind of, until she's not, and then maybe she is. It's, you know, and in the new trailer, spoiler for the new season, in case you care, she is clearly evil again. So I don't know. I feel like a lot of these characters, everyone will have unique opinions on them, because I was looking at it from someone who really doesn't know that much about He-Man. So from my understanding, she's an evil person gone good person, very standard sort of arc for this type of show. In one episode, she does have a really nice conversation with Orko, which ends up being a pretty okay scene overall. I thought it was nice. She has a quippy moment with him, and they get to explain their own origins to each other. Orko is by far my least favorite Masters of the Universe character. He always has been. I know Tila, I said, was for the show, but Orko, I know a lot of people like him. I have never been an Orko fan, and I probably never will be. This show didn't help with that. But yeah, back to Evelyn. Mini rant aside. Yeah, she's fine. Take her or leave her. We'll see what happens in part 2, I guess. The rest of the cast is more ensemble than interactive, fleshed out main characters. They all get their own moment to shine, but oftentimes this is right before they die. Bringing back Orko for an example, he has that heartfelt conversation with Evelyn before biting the dust against Scareglow. I have never really liked Orko, but I did feel bad for him in that instance, because it felt like they built him up just to break him down, and I feel like they do that a lot, particularly the male side characters, and that could just be because all of the males are side characters in the show. But even with Adam, I felt like some of the coolest scenes happened just so that his death would feel more weighted. The art in the series is really nice. It looks good. I don't have a whole lot else to say about it besides that. Powerhouse Animation Studios is the same place that makes Castlevania, and it definitely shows in the style. I felt like it was sort of like if Castlevania took place in the daytime specifically, which isn't a bad thing. I think the visuals were part of the whole reason that I watched the show. One big thing that I want to address, which I'm sure a lot of people disagree with me about, is how the women in the show look. I know that a lot of people hate it. So the proportions and the body types for the women in the show are the same. They're built pretty muscular in nature, and to be honest, I really don't mind how the women look. I don't see anything wrong with exaggerating muscles or giving women visually strong designs. And by visually strong, I mean physically visually visually strong. Usually I actually end up liking a lot of characters with this type of design. I think Tila specifically works really well in this instance. Since she went off and acted, at least briefly, as an individual, it makes sense that she would cut her hair and bulk up. She no longer had a group of people around her to help her if she's at a disadvantage. Even when she's with Audra, it's clear that she's the leader and the muscle of the two, so she probably had the design that made the most sense to me. Counter to this, there is an identicalness to their design that I do think was unnecessary. While I felt like Tila makes sense and is a good example of a physically strong character, I don't think Audra or Evil Lyn should have had that same amount of muscle in their design. Evil Lyn specifically uses magic. We see her use it both in the current time and in the past, so I think having her designed with such a similar body type really doesn't match up to her character. Giving her a curvier or softer design also would have distinguished her more as a character visually. It made sense in the 80s for every character to have the same body type, but we're living in a time where that just isn't necessary for animation anymore, and also I think it would have just helped sell the show better to not have all the women look the same. Again, not to compare this show too much to the Netflix She-Ra show, but I do feel like that version of She-Ra did a really good job at diversifying body types and the expectations that people could have for the characters being updated versus this version of Masters of the Universe, where even though the women are supposed to be unique and different, they all kind of vaguely look the same. The writing in the show is fine. I wish I could feel one way or another about it, but it's hard for me to form an opinion on it. I really like the writing in episode 1 and the establishment of the world. It did a good job at consolidating and defining what was going on. Some scenes did feel kind of clunky or messy, like when Man-at-Arms was telling the king and queen that Adam had died. Part of that is because they're establishing plot really quickly, and so that's also the moment that Tila bounces from the castle like she's gone. And because those two plot points are kind of happening simultaneously, I feel like neither of them are given the weight that they should have had. It may just be because there's only a 5-episode run, but I feel like that is a pretty common thing where they kind of throw something at you as a viewer, notice it, and then it comes back later, which is fine. Like, that's what writing should do, but it just is never as significant as it feels like it should be for when it comes back around. One thing I do want to mention is that the show can also get a bit preachy with quite a bit of pandering for the strong women message of the show. Mileage will vary on your feelings towards that, but where She-Ra felt like it was purposeful and at the very center it was empowerment, Tila never quite hit that mark for me. The show always felt a bit too much like it was pandering one way and sacrificing other opportunities because of it. Many of the male characters felt one-dimensional, which is strange since arguably He-Man's main demographic is or historically has been men. Again, I do think Tila works fine as the main character. I just feel like kind of bad that the male characters seem weaker in comparison, if that makes sense. My overall feelings for the show is that it's fine. I'm probably gonna watch part 2, but I don't know if I'll watch it when it comes out. I may rewatch part 1 and then watch part 2 sort of like in a day, maybe. But overall, I'm not overly excited for part 2. Part 1 didn't super sell it for me. I don't think that it deserves the hate that people give it, but I also am not a diehard Masters of the Universe or He-Man fan, so I feel like if you're looking for something that is the old series, like the 80s series, continued, you will be disappointed going into it because your expectations won't be what this show is delivering. But if you just want to watch an action show, then it's fine. I'll probably check out part 2. Will I watch it right when it releases? Probably not. I feel like all my questions are answered in the trailer. One repeated thing throughout the series is some sort of mystery related to Tila's history, and it's, ooh, that rhymed, where characters repeatedly say that they need to tell her something, or that there's something important about her, or that she's so powerful and they need to explain to her why, and she puts it off. And I thought it was pretty clear that she was either meant to replace Adam, or she would be like this sorceress's daughter or something, and the new trailer pretty much said, yep, tick that box, mark it off, that's what's happening. So like, since that was the biggest mystery of part 1, aside from like the plot and solving the situation, that got answered, so I feel like I'm good. like that's what I was here for, and you told me already, so why would I come back? There are certain elements of part 2 that look really interesting, like Adam having the He-Man powers without the filter or whatever of the sword, but like I just don't know if my interest is there, and I honestly feel like they either should have released them all at the same time, so like held it out until they were done with it as a whole and dropped it as a whole, because I would probably watch like 10 hours of it at once instead of 5 hours and then 5 hours months later. But the series itself is fine, but I feel like at this point I can take it or leave it, you know? I do think the characters are a little weak overall, but that's an entirely biased opinion for me, and that may not be true for you. I do think the show is fine, it's just not what my expectations were, and it's not what a lot of people expected for this series. Have you watched Masters of the Universe Revelation? Please tell me what you think. I feel like I'm in the minority for people who like Tila's design, but her design is what I like most about her as a character. If you watched it and you hated it, or you watched it and you loved it, let me know. I'd be really interested in hearing what people think. Are you gonna watch part 2? Anyway, thanks for checking out my video. I'm gonna try to post this in the middle of the week, which means 2 videos in 1 week, which is weird because then I probably won't post one on Monday like I've been doing, but we're just gonna see how it goes. Yeah, thanks for checking out my video. Bye.